All righty, Ramon, what's happening?
Hey Anthony, what's up?
Everything's good, man. Can't complain.
I won't be able to call in on Saturday night, but let's just say you might get a VIP calling in on next Wednesday. I'm not going to say who it is.
Okay, got a little surprise coming. Sounds good to me.
Anyway, so today, I think I told you a couple times about that story that I'm working on called the Mattis File. And I had another interview today with the two people from California who were Bernie supporters. And they pretty much have started to I think in the next week or so, there's going to be more people who are going to interview them on the progressive side. So please take a watch. Anybody out there, Anthony, if you could share it in the chat. Anthony, you can also probably, if you wanted to, you could interview them. But I know you don't do long form ones. So whatever. Anybody wants to interview them, they could probably contact me. Bold Like a Leopard is my channel. In any case, I think that officially, based on yesterday, the Ohio Democratic Party is basically rest in peace. They're gone. They're not going to be. They're not going to be fielding a serious candidate this November in the governor's race.
Right.
And the reason I'm saying that is because the Mark Anthony, that's not true. That's fake news. I'm not cleaning this shelf ever, especially not on Saturday. But what was I going to say? Yesterday, Dennis Kucinich, who was our candidate for governor, the Democratic candidate, the guy who saw a UFO and also was against the war in Syria, which is fine, but people make fun of him all the time for it. So he was just destroyed in the Democratic primary because these idiots don't realize that just because if you call somebody a Russian agent doesn't make it so. And I think it's like really frustrating for me because there's so many things you could say to criticize Dennis Kucinich, such as the fact that he bankrupted the city back in the 70s, and we had a declared default here, which was like the first time I think in like 80 years that a city in the U.S. had declared default.
Wow.
So they could have talked about that. They could have talked about the fact that, he is basically, they would have had to talk about the issues. That's basically what I'm talking about. So instead, they started saying, oh, he's a Russian agent and he works for Syria and whatever. And instead, they're going to get a guy who probably will lose a lot of Democratic votes because he's a NRA former supporter, and he's also Elizabeth Warren's female dog. His name is Richard Cordray, and he basically looks like, the guy who you had moderate your detention in school in like 10th grade or something.
Right.
Maybe I'll get a picture of him. So this guy is the former head of the CFPB, if you know what that is. So that was the organization. Yeah, here he is. This is a perfect picture. 1 second. I'll open this up and share screen. 1 second. So they want this idiot to be the next governor of Ohio. And he's running against a Republican who's like old and nobody cares about what he thinks anyways. So, and that guy is Mike DeWine, who I met when I was in 8th grade, and he was like senator here. So I think it's going to be a boring election personally. Now I could be wrong. Like they could probably make up some myth that Mike DeWine had some sort of weird sexual encounter with an alien or something. And then they'd probably have to take back all the propaganda they said about Dennis Kucinich. But I mean, don't hold your breath. I think the Democrats in Ohio are basically dead. Sherrod Brown is running for senator. He's going to be hard to defeat for the Republicans. And the guy who won the GOP nomination, I'm not crazy about. His name is Jim Renacci. So it's pretty much going to be a boring election season for me, which gives me a little more time to troll, elections happening in other states. So Florida, get ready. I'm going to probably be trolling a lot of their elections. By the way, New York State, because of this whole thing with Cynthia Nixon, saying that marijuana dispensaries can be used as reparations for slavery or something. Or no. Do you know who Cynthia Nixon is?
I don't know who that is. No.
So Cynthia Nixon is the Sex and the City actress who's running for governor of New York. And
Okay.
she's like further to the left than Andrew Cuomo. And
Oh,
he's trying.
isn't that the one from Sex in the City?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So she said this week that giving marijuana dispensaries to black people would be a form of reparations.
Oh no, she didn't.
But okay, so I'm not going to be like the smear media. The thing is that she meant that it would be reparations for all of the black people who were put in jail for drug possession.
I mean, when you say the word reparations, when you say that slavery, like, because slavery comes up, you don't.
Right,
You
there's a
don't
visceral reaction, which
Yeah.
is she didn't like bargain for that because she's never left the island of Manhattan in her life. So obviously, you know, and she's going to have a rough time campaigning in upstate New York where I have a cousin, because over there they don't care about any of that stuff. They just want lower taxes, and they actually are pretty pro gun in upstate and western New York. So, you know, I've been trolling around for one of the candidates, Larry Sharpe, over there, even though I'm not a New York resident. So I encourage, if you live in New York State, check out Larry Sharpe. That's Sharpe with an E at the end.
Yeah.
And I've told him to call into your show, but he hasn't done it because his show is also on as we speak on Facebook,
Oh, okay.
which
Okay.
is pathetic. I've told him the strategy doesn't work. He's got to be like, you know, he's got to step up his game.
Right.
But he's a good idea, man. So I'm probably just gonna tell him to call your show on a Saturday or something.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well just call in just to get your, to boost the signal, so to speak.
So another thing that they were saying in Massachusetts was that, have you heard of Shiva Ayyudarai, the guy who's running against Elizabeth Warren?
I've not heard. No, I think I've heard that name, but I'm not really sure about that person.
That's the guy from India who's got the campaign where he says only a real Indian can beat a fake Indian.
Yeah. I've seen him. Yeah.
So he was suing, or he was being sued by the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where MIT and Harvard are, and they were trying to get him. They were trying to force him to take the decals off of his bus that basically makes fun of Elizabeth Warren and has like an Indian headdress on it. So today there was this bogus story in the Boston Globe. This is the first time they ever featured a story about it, and they were saying that he raised millions, but nearly 97% are like in-kind donations, as if anybody cares. Whereas,
Right.
I mean, is that worse than getting money from Monsanto, as Elizabeth Warren has been getting? You know, it's like I don't understand why because what that actually means, I think, is that he's been donating to his own campaign. So is that a bad thing?
I don't think it is. No, because I think that's what Trump pretty much did.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the, so the Boston Globe is for those of you who don't know, the Boston Globe is actually owned by the New York Times. So this is the first time they've covered this guy, and he's actually yelling at them because they're always complaining about racism. In fact, they had a stupid story today about this this restaurant in Boston that's like heavily in debt, but it happens to be owned by a couple of Venezuelans. So they were complaining that people were trying to get the restaurant closed down, even though it's a failing restaurant and it's heavily in debt and nobody eats there. So he's been saying, well, if you're so against racism, how come you won't cover my campaign, even though I'm running against a bunch of white Republicans and Democrats? Because he's an independent. So the first story that they run on him is that, oh, he hasn't really raised millions of dollars. He's basically been donating to his own campaign because he has a lot of money.
Okay, I see what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that he's not really reaching the people, I suppose. But to say that he's donating his own money, that's not a bad thing in itself.
Right, and the thing is, if you look at now these guys, both of them, Larry Sharpe and Shiva Ayyudarai, they could probably use a lot of help, which is why I talk about them frequently when I can. But if you see when he goes to South Boston, which is like basically the roughest part of Boston. That's like Marky Mark territory, I think. Or no, it's either Ben Affleck or one of those other Boston stars comes from there.
Marcus from there, yes.
Yeah, he is. So they love him because they hate Elizabeth Warren because she represents like the really snobby people from Cambridge and Brookline, Massachusetts. So they love seeing him basically troll her and in his fake leprechaun uniform and whatever. And I think he's truly like the candidate of the troll generation. So, you know, if you can get him on, and it probably would be pretty easy, you guys would probably have a really fun time.
No doubt.
Anyway, that's about it. So I guess have a great night, and you know, on to the next guest.
Thank you for the call, man. Definitely appreciate you.
Take it easy.
All right, now same to you. All right, shout out to my man Ramon for the call. Most certainly appreciate it. Now, as far as Marky Mark, I think Marky Mark is from Dorchester. Now, I don't know if that's Southie or not, but there was actually a movie that he was in called Southie, which, you know, he was a star of, if I'm not mistaken. So